Good morning from beautiful Irvine, California. This is Shane Starr with Philosophical Reflections on Religion, and today I'm taking up a major challenge, I think, in discussing the concept of deism. I think of all the alternatives to Christianity, deism or incorporating a form of deism is the one that is the most challenging and also the one I think I respect the most. Of course, not as much as the religion I have chosen, Catholicism, but still I think it's a powerful competitor and it's worthy of discussion. So here's why I think it's a worthy opponent, we'll call it, of Christianity and more specifically Catholic Christianity in my case. Deism acknowledges a creator. It recognizes order and design. And in doing so, it avoids many of the philosophical problems of atheism that I brought up in earlier videos. So what then makes it ultimately a weaker argument? I'm going to go through several points. I have, I think, 6 altogether that I want to go through. And I think as we go into my first point, just to give you some context of what deism is and where it comes from, I think it's in popular culture, the first thing I think of is pantheism and Spinoza. It's different from that. Pantheism is identifying God with the universe, and I think that's what many atheists actually do, and I addressed that in my former video. But it is related to pantheism in that it believes in some sort of ultimate force that we can call God, but it's an impersonal force. I think most people associate this belief with Darwin. Charles Darwin was no atheist, but he wasn't a Christian either. He was a deist. Some would argue Immanuel Kant, even though Kant went to church, in his book I studied, Religion Within Rational Limits Alone. Well, it depends on which way you translate it, but he associated religion under practical reasons. So he believed in a God, but his religion was kind of devoid of all miracles. More on that in a minute. I would say the early American transcendentalists, Thoreau and Emerson, I think I could almost classify them as deists. And early Stephen Hawking, in some ways even late Stephen Hawking, although he goes from a sort of deist belief to a pantheist belief, I think, ultimately. But let's look at the argument I'm going to make against deism here. And so I think my first point is, when we think of God, we think of religion. As I've discussed in my videos here, I have always thought of it as a relationship. And deism starts lining up at first really well. There's a God. God creates the universe. God establishes natural laws. But in deism, God doesn't intervene in the natural universe at all. God does not reveal himself. God does not receive or answer prayers. And I've heard it be said, deism is somewhat like an ant farm or a clockmaker who creates something and then just leaves it alone. And again, why do I think this is a powerful argument? It's because when we look at the natural world, sort of, the second law of thermodynamics in real life, we see things create and then diminish. We see death, we see decay, we see the winding down, and contemporary science tells us that the universe as a whole is winding down. So it appears to be in line with the deistic belief. But, and here's the heart of my first point, if there is a God and there is a universe, and we know at least for sure that second part is true, then what is religion for? Now, pure deists might say, exactly, it's for nothing. But I want you to really think about this. If deism is true, then not only is religion pretty much meaningless, but any prayer becomes meaningless. Any worship is insignificant or meaningless because the God doesn't care if you worship him or not. Revelation is impossible. And long story short, deism gives us a creator, yes, but not a relationship. And when we think of all the great philosophers, regardless of their beliefs, and the great theologians, the question always comes back to, why is there something instead of nothing? Deism tells us how there is something instead of nothing, but not why. Because the universe in a deistic belief system doesn't make any sense. Why would you make something and ignore it? Why would you build a watch and never wear it? By the way, I have a pretty cool watch on right now. That's my humor. Anyway, so this runs counter to the whole claim, humans seek meaning in the universe. Why is there something rather than nothing? Deism still doesn't answer that question. It answers the how, but not the why. And in that case, it's no better than a pantheistic view of the universe by itself. Okay, so that leads us again right into point 2. If deism is true, why did God create anything? What purpose does creation serve a God who doesn't interact with it at all? Now, it'd be one thing if God made inanimate beings and just for God's own pleasure, like background music or something, but God made creatures who seek love, who seek meaning, who seek his presence, want to speak with him, wants to be spoken to. Humans have a spiritual thirst. Now, as we continue on into the future, that seems to be less and less the case, doesn't it? And I think that's, again, what makes deism a powerful rival of Christianity. But mostly humans seek a overall ultimate meaning, purpose in their lives, and ultimate purpose altogether. We seek enjoyment, we seek relationships, we like to express ourselves and share that with others. Why would the creator of us not have that same emotion that was given to us? Like, I have no love, I have no feeling, I have no desire to talk to anyone, but I'm going to create all these people who do have that desire. That doesn't make that much sense. Why build a universe and forever withdraw from it? And I think some people will say, yeah, that's a good question, but that's the way it is. And I want to make a distinction here. God leaves us to our freedom, yes, but freedom is not equivalent to absence. I can have children, and as they grow, I leave them alone and let them do what they want. That doesn't mean I'm not there kind of watching over them. It doesn't mean that I don't have feelings and I won't reach out to them again later. Freedom and absence, I think when it comes to God, we treat them as one and the same, but no, those are distinct concepts. Freedom does not entail absence. In the same way that me letting my children play on the playground a little bit distant from me, that doesn't mean I'm not there at all. Okay. All right, point 3. And I've already alluded to this. Human nature doesn't fit with the deism concept either. Throughout history, humans have sought transcendence. And, even atheists seek ultimate meaning in the universe and the laws of nature. Humans, most of them anyway, they pray, they worship, they believe in something or some meaning beyond themselves. Even if they are atheist or agnostic, they still have that yearning. And I think love fits into that very, very neatly. I think at the basic level, love is a part of this greater search for meaning. So, again, why would a creator build creatures with these emotions, this mental capacity for love and for meaning, if no such connection is possible? That would be similar to God creating us with hunger and thirst, but no food and water to fix those yearnings. So, and when it comes to love, I mean, I discussed it in one of my first videos in this channel, Kierkegaard's Parable of the Maiden, where a king is in love with the maiden, but he knows if he meets her in all his glory, that she'll be either scared into marrying him or selfishly motivated into marrying him. He'll never know if she really loves him for who he is, his feelings, his thoughts, his emotions. And I think it's such a beautiful analogy of God coming to the world in Christ, in the persona of Jesus. I just can't not believe that. And maybe that's showing my hand too much, that I'm a person of faith and that my bias is showing in this video. But when I think of that story, I think of the beauty of it, and I think of the thematic spiritual truth it conveys. And then I match that up against cold, hard deism. I know which way I'm choosing. It's not even close. So, point 4. When I think of the history of the world, let's not even talk Catholicism or Christianity in general. Let's talk every single religion that's ever existed. If deism is true, every one of them is wrong. Christianity is wrong. Islam is wrong. Judaism is wrong. Hindu religion is wrong. Miracles are wrong. Prophets are wrong. Any historical claims about Jesus and miracles, much less the resurrection, is all wrong. Deism doesn't merely disagree with religions. If any of those religions are true, which is, it's obvious, I believe one of them is, there are elements of truth in all the others. With deism, it invalidates every claim of the divine or any claim to knowledge of the divine ever made. Every religion is wrong if deism is true. Is that something you can really hang your hat on, really believe in? Not me. So really, point 5, philosophically speaking, deism resembles practical atheism more than it does Christianity. Even though conceptually you would think, well, deism believes in a God, so therefore it's kind of closer to Christianity. In practice, it's not. It's closer to atheism. A God who never acts, never speaks, never reveals himself, never enters history. That's indistinguishable from no God at all. Now again, I'm not saying deism equals atheism. Far from it. I think deism explains a lot of things that atheism doesn't and cannot. That's why I think it's a better alternative to atheism. But in practice, for making my life better, for making your life better, it doesn't do us much good. Unless the deistic God changes his mind and chooses to reveal itself to us at the moment of our death or something, or later in history after all. And that would be a change. It wouldn't be deism anymore. So again, from the perspective of everyday life, the difference between deism and atheism is virtually nothing. And I would add agnosticism into the mix. And that's why, back to Pascal's wager, we need to make a choice, because to put the choice off, or to say it be forever in question, or to say, well, there's a God, but that's as far as I go, that means no prayer, no revelation, no miracles, no relationship. And that's what I'm hanging my whole faith on, is the relationship part. Without the relationship, it's nothing. What does Jesus say to the evil people? Oh, you were bad. You did this one thing when you were a kid. Oh, you did this one thing when you were an adult. No, he doesn't say any of that. What does he say? He says, I don't know you. I don't know you. It's all based on a relationship. Deism is no relationship. Therefore, it is not a real religion, and it's no better than nothing at all. So, point 6. And this is a question, if you are attracted to deism, why would a rational creator, a creator with infinite intelligence, obviously the ability to love if it wanted to, and I call it an it because it wouldn't even be a person without any human emotion, but it would have to have those qualities in order to create them in us. Why would this rational creator hide from its creation forever? Why would a rational, deistic God permanently withhold the most important, precious thing with its creatures, which is a loving relationship with them? We have been created, we exist to ask questions, to seek meaning, to seek purpose in our lives, to seek love. And whether it's mathematics or science or literature or religion, to seek ultimate explanations of things. Deism says, yes, there is a God, and yes, you're searching for all that, but there's no answer. God chooses not to answer. So yes, the existence of this creator explains the how of the universe, but it still leaves the why unanswered. So yes, deism explains order, it explains design, it explains how there is something, but not why. But it doesn't explain prayer or religious longing or any kind of spirituality. It doesn't explain historical revelation claims. And most of all, it doesn't make sense from a practical point of view. Why create something and ignore it? Especially when you created it to seek you. So the atheist says there's no God. The agnostic says we'll never know. The deist says, yeah, there's a God, but it doesn't matter. And that equals a God without love. And a universe without love is one that I can't believe in. That's all I have for this week. God bless. See you next week.